Rabbi Ben Zion Gaisinski, and I want to bring you something that I hope will be light and fun. During these gloomy days of COVID, our mood can be somewhat depressed, and we are looking for ways to be able to lift that mood. Now, what has been helpful is an onslaught of various Zoom sessions, Torah classes, etc., but many of them are a little bit on the heavy side. So I have this idea that we do something that would be light and enjoyable, maybe even fun. We know that the Baal Shem Tov taught us that song is the quill of the soul. So then, why don't we come together here and learn a new song? And with this, we'll be able to lift our mood and maybe even touch our soul. What I'm going to do is choose a song that also has a story to it, so that in relating to the story, one might be able to use the song as a key to reach an inner part of your soul, or to raise your spirits of some particular dilemma that you might be having. So without further ado, here we go. The story for this song is a story about the Shpola Zayda. The song is called Kazak. You may be familiar with it. It's a very, very enjoyable, upbeat song, and it has 4 stanzas, which we'll talk a bit about later. The Shpola Zayda was of the Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov, and he lived during the late 1700s. As you know, times were very, very difficult then. He was in the Ukraine and actually was the spiritual leader for a little town called Shpola. He was known far and wide as a person with a tremendous heart. When he was a child, I'm talking about an infant, the Baal Shem Tov showed up at his Brit, and when holding the baby, he said what seemed to be a cute remark, that may the child grow up to be like a Zaidi to all those around him, a loving figure. Well, that name stuck with him. The story goes that there was a woman that came to him with a broken heart. What had happened is that she and her husband were renting a krechma. A krechma is an inn, a roadside inn, that you would rent from a nobleman who had tremendous amount of power. They were in cahoots together with the government, and the government allowed them to be judge and jury of the provinces that they owned, and they owned miles and miles of land. It was very common for Jews to be renting a roadside inn from them, and it was a means of making a living. People didn't have the money to buy property or business, but they could rent something, and hopefully the local peasants who weren't faring much better than them, financially that is, would kind of shake off their troubles with a drink. So the Kretschmann was a watering hole where people came to drink, and a man could make a living. Usually they did fairly well and they were able to make rent, but at times, whether it was the weather that kept people away, frigid times, or whatever the reason, there were times that the Jew could not make rent. And if that were to happen, literally his life could be in dire straits, because these landowners, they were like governors in a sense. They were able to throw the Jew into jail, into a dungeon, and unless the community can come up with the funds to bail them out, we don't know where it would end. Well, this woman had that kind of a situation, and to make things even worse, the nobleman, the Paritz, as they used to call him in Yiddish, this fellow was a tyrant, and he had this fun activity that when celebrating his birthday, he would pull his mushka out of the dungeon. That means whatever Jew might be in the dungeon. Dress him in a bear suit. This was a bear skin, which was extremely cumbersome, heavy. The Jew had been starved, emaciated in jail, and he was set up, and he had to face off against a Kazak. The Kazakhs were renegade soldiers that were nimble, and they were known to actually have this talent for dancing. You must be familiar with this. They could jump 6 feet up into the air, etc., etc., and the poor Jew would have to face off. And the way this scheme would go is that the dance would get very, very intense, and eventually somebody would collapse because they would be exhausted. If it was the Jew that collapsed, wouldn't you know, then the soldier had the right, this was the payoff, the reward, the trophy, to take a whip, a training whip, an animal whip, and to whip the Jew, and many, many times the Jew would literally meet the end of his life in that way. And here she was, knowing that the birthday of the pirates was coming up and her husband was in the dungeon, and she was heartbroken and devastated. So she came to the Rebbe, where else is there to turn, money they didn't have, to ask the Rebbe for his advice. For advice for what she might be able to do in a situation like this. The Shmuel Zayda smiled, told her not to worry, and he told her that she should go home and the matter is taken care of. He asked for information as to where the dungeon was, and the following story pursued. The night before the actual birthday, the Shmuel Zayda went to the jail, to the dungeon, and he paid off the sentry, and he actually changed places with the Jew, so that the Jew went home to his family, and now the Shmuel Zayda was locked up. Nobody would know the difference as long as there was a Jew in jail. And the squire, the pirates, the landowner, certainly didn't care as long as he had somebody to entertain his guest, his tyrant guests. Well, I will jump ahead and let you know that legend is that night, the Shmuel Zayda, while sitting in jail, prayed and meditated, and he was visited by Eliyahu Hanavi, by the prophet Elijah. And Elijah taught the Shmuel Zayda how to dance like nobody had danced before. The next day, the evening came and the party began, and the Shmuel Zayda was brought out, the Jew, he was schlepped out, and he was dressed in this bearskin. As I said, it was cumbersome. He really didn't stand a chance under normal circumstances. And the music began to play, the Kazak music. Hop Kazak, dance, jump, Kazak. And the Shmuel Zayda, who was an elderly person at that point, began to dance and face off. People were in shock. First of all, he was dancing beautifully, and his energy was beyond anything they ever expected. After some time, the Kazakh began to become exhausted, and he began to pale. He didn't expect this to be going this way. To make a long story short, the end was that after an extended period of time, the Kazakh actually collapsed, and the Shmuel Zayda was allowed to go home free. The Shmuel Zayda understood this as a miracle, obviously he did, and he remembered that song. And he took the song that was played at the time, and he transformed it into a instrument of holiness. And the way the song goes, it has 3 or 4 stanzas, depending on how you break it down. The first part of it is a stanza begins, it's slow and it's worrisome, and it is a person, and this could be any one of us, who is, if you care, self-pity or reflecting under difficult straits. And it's a sad story, so to speak. So this is a slow and heart-wrenching part of the song. The second is where the Jew gets up and says, wait a second, there is our Father in heaven, and he is determined to actually not allow the course to go without him fighting back. In other words, to change his circumstances. So the second stanza is determination. The third stanza is the battle. Of course, a spiritual battle, where he gets up and he fights. And we all know that when we have faith in Hashem and we search for a way, a gato matzasa, that if there is a determination and there's faith and there's effort, then you will succeed. And that's the last stanza. It is very upbeat. It's got a lot of gusto, a lot of fun, and you're very familiar with it probably. It's the Kazak, for which the song is named. That last stanza goes Kazak, and that is a stanza of victory. So without further ado, let's turn to the music. I want you to learn this song. You're going to enjoy it. It's going to reach deep into your soul. And Adam Shar Shira Elamitech Simcha. The only way to sing a song, Rashi says, is to do it with great joy. Now with me, I have a very special friend. He will play, and I will try to sing as best as I can. I will say one thing, that thank God he can play a whole lot better than I can speak. So without further ado, let me introduce my friend and partner, and the other partner, folks, is you. Let's all come together over here and learn the song and enjoy it. Let us begin by asking our musician friend to play the song of Kazak from beginning to its end. Then I will introduce our friend, and we will go about the business of breaking the song down one stanza at a time so that we can learn it thoroughly and enjoy it for the rest of our happy life. Hi, my name is Rabbi Ben-Sion Gaisinski, and with me is our good friend Gershik Cherovinsky.
That's right.
I got it right. What do you know? Okay. So, folks, I think we're off to good synergy over here. Gershik, I wanted to ask you, I know that you are an amazing musician, but for the interest of the people, what is your professional training?
I graduated Moscow Conservatory as a violinist, and then I went to Jacob School of Music in Indiana University and studied their master's degree program. And now I'm doing graduate performing diploma, also in violin, in this case Baroque violin, and I'm doing PhD next year. So that's my background.
That's, it speaks for itself. But I also want to tell you as a rabbi that Hasidic music is not easy to interpret, especially on a instrument like the violin, where every single note and the neshama of the song can be interpreted far better than probably any other equipment. In every Hasidic nostalgia, there is the fiddler, and here we are, and he is really amazing. So you're in for a great treat, folks. But you got to do your part and learn this song. So here we go. This is the first stanza, the stanza of reflection. Folks, now you with us together, everybody. Oh, second stanza, where we make a conscious decision to actually change our situation. So this is the termination. Now you with us again. Third stanza. This is where we get up and arm ourselves spiritually, of course, and actually go out into battle and fight the war. Okay, now everybody. And finally, the last stanza that everybody is waiting for, our Hub Kazak, for which the song is named, the stanza of victory. For certainly, if we make an effort, the Ribbono Shel Olam will be with us, and we will look forward to better days and a good life and great success. Kazak, everybody together. All right, folks. We look forward to be able to sing this together in person. We're going to have a Malava Malka at some point, practice, and let us know if this worked for you. Thank you, everybody. Big hand for Gesher.